Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is choosing love. And we often think of love as sweet and gentle and kind. And love can be a cleansing fire as well. And so today we get to talk about how what it takes to choose love in the face of aggression or conflict, and what that might look like. So before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present and start this new week off with consciousness and attention on this whole notion of love. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here. Welcome. Happy Monday to you and to everybody else that's joining us. So let's take a minute to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and all your organs. And as you exhale any tension, any stress, negativity, any fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, electrifying, illuminating, and energizing all your molecules, all your electrons, lighting your cells up from the inside out. And as you exhale any negativity, fatigue, tension, stress. And now let's gently press our palms together. Just very softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel the deliciousness of that sensation, and bring yourselves present right here, right now. Welcome. Good morning, Suzanne. Great to have you here with us. So today's topic is choosing love. And so we talk about this idea of unconditional love. And what does that mean? You know, oftentimes our emotions are dictated by what we get to receive. And so love being a give and take kind of thing. And I'm wondering, you know, what's available to us as we look at a choice to love, regardless of what we receive in return. So is it possible for us to love someone who doesn't love us back? And I don't mean love in a needy way. I don't mean love like pining type love, you know, unrequited love. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an unconditional love. Like what is that really? What does that look like? Good morning, Lefty's Right Witch. Wonderful to have you here with us this morning. So we're looking at what choosing. So Lefty says choosing, and what does it look like? Good morning, Isabel. Welcome. So good to have you here, as it is with everyone who's joining us today. So we're looking at choosing love, even in the face of aggression or hostility or opposition or lack of love returned. And is it possible for us to love others who don't love us back? And what does that look like? And the thing that I'm getting at is getting to a place in loving that is not conditional upon what the other person says or does or how they respond. Good morning, Marianne. Welcome. I don't know if I've seen you here before. So good to have you joining us. So we're talking about, I think, the courageousness or the strength, the inner alignment and integrity that is required to be able to love without needing something in return. And what does that look like? I don't think it means necessarily suspending judgment. I think it's possible to love someone when you don't particularly like them. I think it's possible to hold a space of love, respect, and appreciation for someone, even if you don't get along. You know, even if they are not returning your appreciation, and where that capacity comes from, I believe, is an inner wholeness. To be able to not need something in return. And so often we give our love in the hopes of receiving love. And that's a very different dynamic from what I'm wanting to discuss with you today. It's not giving love to receive love. It's not giving love to receive anything in return, but just to be able to give love. And I'm wondering if you have experience with that, if you have experience where you get to choose to love, even in the face of of opposition, even in the face of hostility, where you can choose to love. Doesn't mean that that you accept certain behaviors. It doesn't mean that you condone certain ways of acting and thinking, but it doesn't even necessarily mean being non-judgmental. But even beyond the judgment, beyond the friction, beyond the opposition or the conflict, that there is a place from which we can still choose love. And what does that look like? What does it look like to be loving without condition? I believe that love can be a cleansing fire. It's not always gentle and sweet and kind. Love is maybe love is being painfully honest sometimes. Maybe love is holding your tongue sometimes. Maybe love has so many different faces. So I'm wondering what you guys have to say in response to this, or in thinking about this question or these multiple questions. What is your awareness around love? What are your thoughts around love? What are your experiences that have drawn you to see these different aspects or different faces of love? When we have interpersonal relationship love, it's often actually quite conditional, right? It's often give and take. And when we're talking about romantic love, certainly, and that we're talking love, it's interesting, this word love has so many different meanings and so many different dimensions to it. Good morning, Dennis. Welcome. Great to have you here. Happy Monday to you. We're talking about love and it's different faces and different dimensions of love. And most particularly today, we're talking about the unconditional love that isn't asking for anything in return, that isn't needy. And Rosalind says, I haven't figured out my dad's communication style, but I still call him. It's like pulling teeth. It's hard to extract a conversation. And yet you're loving him, it sounds like. Even though it's hard to connect, it sounds like you're having an appreciation for him, Rosalind. Like that's keeping you trying. Isabel says, is it possible? It is possible with a lot of inside work. I have done it many times. That's finding this unconditional place of love. It does take a lot of inside work, because when we're loving, needing, we're pulling from somebody else. We're trying to get something with our love. And Isabel goes on to say, I've done it many times and getting better at it. Yes, the trick is love, no matter what, in a sense, not expecting anything from others. I can do it feeling in God's light energy to give me the strength to be able to love and not expect anything back. Yes, so, it's interesting. I'm not Christian, but I'm just remembering recently I came across something that was talking about Jesus talking about if someone slaps you on the cheek, then turn the other cheek. And I'm not for putting ourselves in abusive situations, and potentially that is descriptive of what could be an abusive situation. But I think what that's ultimately speaking of is the constancy of this unconditional love, the constancy to say, you don't have to stay and take abuse, but there's still the capacity, there's still the capability, still the potential to hold to that love. And it doesn't mean putting yourself in the lion's den necessarily. I think it's possible to extract yourself from dangerous or abusive circumstances and still hold love. And this is not it's not an emotional love. I guess that's kind of the distinction that I'm observing. I don't know if you'll agree or not, but it's not an emotional love. It's not driven by condition or circumstance. It's not, it's just a choice. I love because I say so. I love you because I say so. And what does that mean? It means having some compassionate understanding for your behavior, perhaps. It doesn't mean necessarily accepting that behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean accepting abuse. It shouldn't mean accepting abuse. Suzanne says, loving on my daughter is like loving a cactus, LOL. Very prickly at times, but I love her no matter what. That's so beautiful, Suzanne. To be constant in that love, to know that, you can love somebody even if you don't like them. Isabel says, it makes total sense to me. It makes sense to me, totally. That's awesome. Thank you, Isabel. So, yeah, we've heard of tough love around people that have abusive or self-abusive behaviors. And so another phrase is just popping in my head. You have to be cruel to be kind. I don't know if that's true. I think there may be instances where that's true. when we shine the brilliant light of love, sometimes it can be blinding. And yeah, I'm wrestling with this. I think so many of us wrestle with this in the context of family and community and culture and friends and relatives. You know, like I think that there is a way to have that love and that compassion, while at the same time not even necessarily being in a social relationship potentially. You know, we can have love and appreciation for others and still not choose to interact with them. So Isabel says, absolutely not. Earlier years, I used to accept the abuse out of fear. Exactly. Fear of losing their love, right? So not anymore. So you make a lot of sense. Learn to love without emotion. I think that love can be just purely a choice. And I know that in the past, I too would accept abuse because I was fearful of losing love. And now at a place of greater integration, greater self-alignment, I can have the ability, and it may not always be constant either, but I can access the ability and the choice to love regardless. And it's a very different place. It's not driven by emotion. Isabel says, not allowing anymore to let it get inside. Yes, the abuse or the attacks, you know, to be able to maintain one's own integrity and to have a sense of compassionate awareness. Rafaela, welcome, welcome. I don't believe I've seen you here. Rafaela says, I don't prescribe to unconditional. I see we all have to know how to love each person, knowing their traumas and adjusting ourselves to do so comes with boundaries and the understanding of what conditions are. We have no understanding of judgments because of programming, and that makes things difficult to access the intent to move in righteousness. We say we love unconditionally, but we still see prejudices and racism and discrimination as we use the unconditional love calling card. So I hear what you're saying, Rafaela, and what I'm talking about in terms of unconditional love is a choice to love that's not emotional. You know, and that it's not based on how someone else is treating me, but I'm choosing to love anyway. I'm not saying that we don't have judgments still. I'm not saying that we don't exercise discernment. I'm not saying that we love someone's behavior. I'm not saying that unconditional love is acceptance. I am saying that there is a place from which we can choose to love that is not emotional, and it doesn't prohibit us from acting responsible. You know, it does not prohibit us from extricating ourselves from situations, for instance, that are abusive, or from speaking out about certain things. And I don't presume to say that I have the capacity on a consistent basis at this time in my life anyway, to be living in this place of unconditional love. As I said, it's not necessarily sweetness and light. Hari, welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to have you here with your wonderful, wonderful emojis and icons. So Lefty says, yes, I am afraid I will not only lose the love that actually was never there with this person towards me, but other people that are in the social sphere. I think that really is what I'm afraid of. And so what it is you're afraid of losing isn't really love, is my take on that. What it is losing the affiliation, you losing the connection, losing the relationship. That's kind of what I'm thinking is, like in my family, love was very conditional. And so at any moment, the rug could be pulled out from under, and I would be exiled, so to speak. And that fear of that loss, the fear of that exile would allow me, or out of fear of that exile, I would censor myself, or I would put up with behaviors that I might not otherwise have endured, and situations that I might not otherwise have endured if I weren't afraid of losing that relationship, or afraid of the consequences, in terms of not love, but support, or social consequences. But that's not love. Those things aren't love. So I think that when the way that we use the word love is, it covers so many different, vastly different experiences, vastly different situations and circumstances. And the love that I'm talking about here is the choice to love. It doesn't mean making yourself vulnerable necessarily. So Isabel says, sure, it is a continuing inside work. At times we still fall back, but if we're conscious about it, we get back on our track of self-respect and love. And I think, Isabel, you hit on the key there, that there's a place of self-respect and wholeness when there is an inner integrity, inner alignment, and inner strength. Then the onslaught from the externals is not able to have the same kind of impact. And we need less from outside, right? We don't need the approval. We don't need the appreciation. It would be nice. It's always nice, but we don't need that. And we don't need that as a condition for our loving. And I think it's sort of a new awareness, or a dawning awareness, for me anyway, is to be able to be making these distinctions and recognizing them, and looking to see how that aligns or doesn't align with behavior, my behavior, and the behavior of others. So Lefty says, I'm afraid of losing relationships with others that are associated, and I'm already being exited, I'm thinking, or exiled. That's what you're saying, exiled in some ways. Hurts more because this is a spiritual level thing. So understand that especially in groups that are supposed to be more conscious and more elevated, I have found that in many spiritually oriented groups, people just have more more tools to manipulate too, you know, like the integrity behind the use of language and tools and transformational technologies are not just because people have access to transformational language and technologies does not mean that they are evolved. It does not mean that they have that inner integrity and alignment. And I've seen some of the worst manipulations I've ever seen in quote unquote conscious communities. You know, it's not across the board, but the thing is that as we learn more techniques, technologies, approaches, we have more to potentially abuse too. So, and the thing is that in that kind of context, it becomes that much more disheartening, or it has in the past for me, because I had expectations. And so realize that those relationships are not, that's not love necessarily. You know, our social relationships are not necessarily based in love. They're often based in mutual benefit, you know. So as we see the benefit, then we're, you know, it's an exchange in so many ways, maybe not consciously or deliberately. Maybe we feel a great affinity with others. But again, that affinity and the emotional fulfillment that can occur in those kinds of contexts, we say we love one another. It's not the same as what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is the choice to love. And it doesn't mean that you maintain relationship with those people even. So Isabel says, yes, I hear you. Went through same in my family, Mira. The choice of self-love and respect. So again, thank you for that, Isabel, because it is in our ability to love ourselves and to have that integrated alignment within ourselves, that wholeness, that then the neediness that we have in so many give and take social type emotional relationships, that neediness is mitigated. The neediness isn't at play. You know, there's no longer that neediness. It's a choice. And I think it's an incredibly powerful choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice. So Suzanne says, I started letting go of toxic relationships. Now I'm consciously filling that space with non-toxic relationships. Congratulations, Suzanne. That is huge. Setting boundaries out of love for myself. Perfect. That's beautiful. And as we become more whole, we need less from others. Now, that's not to say, like in a romantic relationship, you want to have that give and take. You know, that is what a social relationship is. I think that the concept that I'm playing with today is love beyond relationship. So there's a capacity to love others, like to choose to love, to choose to, what does it mean? What does it mean to hold a place of compassionate understanding? It doesn't, like I said again, it doesn't mean that we have to have a relationship, like an ongoing relationship. So Isabel says, Yes, I agree. That's why I have a hard time with fitting in groups, because one thing one thing is what they say, one thing is what they say, others are their actions, sometimes very hidden, but is there the discrimination? Yeah, I agree. So within groups, there are cliques. There's this balance of social capital, so to speak, that shifts and changes. And again, even when people talk about love or being loving, it's really not always um, in play. It's really not always present in these kinds of circumstances. Lefty says, I guess just send love and move on, take myself out of the immediate situation and grow better relationships elsewhere. Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes we don't have the ability to extricate ourselves from our relationships that are not that wholesome. And we get to shift our engagement, and at the same time, it's possible to, again, choose love. What does that look like? It looks like maybe having a compassionate understanding, so that there's some, maybe blame is removed. But that doesn't mean you go blind to the dangers, for example, or the dynamics. You don't, being choosing love is not the is not excusing necessarily. Understanding why someone behaves a certain way doesn't mean that you have to accept it. Doesn't mean that that is acceptable behavior. You may not be able to change it, but it doesn't mean that you need to subject yourself. It doesn't mean that you can't establish boundaries. Deanna, welcome, welcome. I don't believe I've seen you here before. It's wonderful to have you here. We've been talking today about love and choosing love, from a place that is beyond circumstance, like beyond saying, I'm going to love you if you act like this with me, and I'm not going to love you if you don't. But that there's a level of love beyond emotion, and that we actually can choose it. Now, do you want an intimate relationship where behaviors aren't considered? No. An intimate relationship, ideally, especially if you're choosing a partner, for example, it's a give and a take. And there is an exchange. Relationships are an exchange. But what I'm talking about here is another level of choosing love. So Isabel says, I've grown up having to please others and never to take care of my feelings or interests. So the process is reversing it all. Isabel, I felt very much the same, always challenged as to whether to be bowing to the demands and needs of others at my expense, or asserting myself. And oftentimes my assertion of myself, it was hostile and angry, because I didn't have the inside integrity to just be able to love myself enough. I felt like I had to fight for myself, rather than just to love myself enough to be respectful of my own needs. And I didn't know how to do that. It wasn't even a concept for me at that time, where I felt like I had to fight for myself. And yeah. So Elaine, so glad to see you here. Welcome, welcome. I was wondering if you were going to chime in. Also, be well to see why this reflection is here, to show me something about myself. Once I see why I am looking at this, it is completely and no longer a need. Beautiful, 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 Elaine. Exactly. that all of what we experience in life is reflecting ourselves back to us in a certain way. And Isabel says, yes, 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 me neither. And Diana says, I was here weeks ago, if you can recall. I was born, thank you. I'm sorry, Diana, for not remembering. And thank you for reminding me. I'm so glad that you're back with us. I was born with precautions which continue. Yes, unconditional divine love, unionship is a balance of honoring self and the other person by having conversations with each other to come to a mutual agreement. I think that is true in the context, especially of emotional love, and where we do a dance with one another to say what is, precognitive visions. Okay, not precautions, precognitive visions. Now I remember that, Deanna. Thank you for reminding me. And I'd love to hear more of your story. Maybe we can have a conversation, because having that level of awareness in a world that doesn't recognize such things as possible for the most part had to be an extreme challenge growing up. So I'm very, very curious about these precognitive visions. Anyway, I think I so appreciate, I always tell you this, but it's so true. I so appreciate the contributions that each of you make to this conversation. You enrich me and you enrich the conversation for everyone. And I so deeply appreciate you for that, and for sharing in this time with me to be exploring these ideas. And so I'm just very, very, very grateful. And I think I'll call it a day today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is Maggie, if you haven't met her before, buried under my collar here. And we go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you to check out the other amazing programming on the Enlightened World Network channels. There's One with the Earth, there's Enlightened World Living, Enlightened World Network. And until next time, so much love to you. Let's choose love.